the CFO pulled me aside. He was like, "Hey, you want to take on an additional team?" And I was just like, "Yeah, of course I do." And he was like, "Do you want to know what the team is before you agree to taking on?" It's like, no. When the CFO asks you if you want to do additional stuff, you say absolutely.
Welcome, listeners, to The Abstract, where the biggest voices in the legal industry take us through key challenges and moments of growth throughout their careers and what led them to where they are today. My name's Tyler Finn. I'm the head of community and growth at SpotDraft, a leading CLM company that enables lawyers and businesses by operationalizing their contract management processes. And today I am super excited to have Evan Ferl with us. Evan was previously the GC and VP of Strategy and Corp Dev at Poshmark. And now he is the Chief Strategy Officer at Bambee, which is providing small to medium-sized businesses with dedicated HR managers and easy-to-use software to manage employee performance, store company documents, receive HR guidance on demand. Something that I think, honestly, SpotDraft, we've got a great HR team, but we could probably use.
Let's go. Let's go. I'm here to make deals happen on this call.
Evan's also got his own newsletter, which we're going to talk about today, and is one of the reasons I invited him on this episode. He's done some pretty cool projects on his own on the side all throughout his career. So, Evan, super excited to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I heard that you described that this is like big legal voices, so I'm not particularly sure that I'm in the right place. But like,
I'm by the end of the episode, though.
Okay, yeah, my voice will get bigger as the episode goes on. So yeah, super pumped. This is like I love doing these kind of things on Friday because I feel like I just leave like so energized. You know, I'm like just ready to go out there and like, I don't know, conquer the weekend, still work. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I leave always super pumped.
Awesome. Well, we've got a couple of themes for the episode, and the first one is really kind of around finding your passion in law. And I'll start this one the way that I start a lot of these conversations, which is, you know, what led you into the law, and then we can talk about passion from there. But what led you into a career in the law?
Yeah, when you're like finding your passion in the law, I'm like, yeah, good luck, because I don't know that many people do it. Okay, what led me into law? So I don't know. I think I switched majors like 6 times in college, probably. I think I started out as in industrial engineering and. In Summer B of the University of Florida, and I didn't even take one engineering course before I switched my major. I don't know what I don't know how I figured out I didn't like it by not taking the course, but I was like, no way. And so
That's
like
scary.
I think I did, yeah. So, but probably for the better. But I think I did industrial engineering, and then there was like a few other majors. This was all in like the first couple semesters. And then, it's like economics and business for a while and like wasn't into that, despite, shameless plug going back and getting my MBA, like wasn't into business at the time. And then I figured that I should really focus on something that had little to no economic value at all, which was classical studies and political science, which is what I finally ended on. This like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, college student. I was like, I just want to like learn stuff that I really enjoy doing and that I'm pumped about. And so like I studied. There was a classical lit and a classical language track, and the classical language required you to take Greek and Latin, and the classical lit only required you to take Latin. And I'm terrible at foreign language, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do classical lit. And then when I was like finally at like towards the tail end of my junior year, I was like, okay, like. Classical studies sets you up to like give like funny critiques of the movie Gladiator, and like that's about it, So like, so what?
What the hell? I took like 8 years of Latin, and I've seen that movie on pretty much every rainy day in high school and in college as well. Honestly,
I mean, it is okay. I mean, it's one of the best movies of all time. So like, there's some utility there. I'm terrible at languages. I love languages. Like, it's weird. Like, I love foreign languages. I've taken Spanish. I've taken French. I've taken Latin. I'm horrible at all of them. I got the worst grades I ever got in school in Latin, despite loving it. And then I was like, okay, like what? Okay, so what should I do? And my dad's this like big, high-powered science dude, and like, I was like, I don't really want to be a scientist because like my dad's also much taller than I am. So like I've been physically living in his shadow my whole life. I can't be professionally living in his shadow my whole life too. Yeah. So I was like, all right, what do I really like doing? I was like, I like reading, I like writing, I like talking to people. Everyone is always like, I like arguing, so I should be an attorney. And I was like, no, you shouldn't. Like, that's not really a good reason. But in any event, I was like, okay, maybe I'll go to law school, because I took a legal writing class where at the end of the class, you did this like kind of a mock trial for law students when you were an undergrad. And I really, really liked that. Like the prep for it, the thoughtfulness behind it, like how you formulated arguments and opinions and like got your collateral together and everything like that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to law school. And I remember I was like studying for the LSAT. My practice exams, I just did miserably on. So bad. So like, I don't even want to tell you the scores because like they were just magnificently bad. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take the LSAT anyways. I'm going to do way better on it and luckily did way better on it. Like, I don't know if you can get a zero. I don't know if you can get a zero on the LSAT, but definitely in the practice exams, I was as close to that as you possibly could. But I always made the joke that like, pretty sure the only reason I got into UF Law School is because my application got stuck underneath someone else's application when they slid it over to the approved file. But yeah, like that, like my path to law school was kind of just that. It was like it wasn't that it was the last choice, but it was that I went through all these other different ideations and thought processes and things like that, and like finally just had to say like, what do I really like doing? And what is the closest profession, at least to start with, that I can do that? And and there I was in law school.
You also went through quite a few sort of like very different organizations. You started at NASA, so you actually you did end up sort of close to the science piece, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, talk us through a little bit of like NASA, and then deciding, hey, what I want to do is go in house. And then you've been at big companies, you've been at small companies, We don't need the whole resume, but talk us through sort of like moving through these very, very different environments and what you learned about yourself as you made that journey.
Yeah, good question. Okay, so in law school, boy, like I think I'm going to start off this whole blog podcast thing sounding like I shouldn't be on it, right? But anyways, because I talked about like how terrible I did in undergrad, law school, like, I was not at the top of my class, very candidly. And I think a lot of it was that I just like, I also, once I found out that I wanted to be a lawyer, I didn't know what kind of lawyer I wanted to be and like what I wanted to do, and all my other friends, this was in Florida, and in Florida, like especially back when I went to law school, which is now longer than it was a number of years ago. Florida, there wasn't tech. There wasn't really in-house work. It was like, you can be a construction litigation person. You can like do slip and falls in like public supermarkets, and you can do like, nursing home malpractice or whatever. I don't know. Not that we don't need those kind of attorneys. It's just not the kind of attorney I wanted to be. So I was like, man, like what the hell do I even want to do with this degree? And like one of the things growing up that like I always remember doing is like watching rocket launches, being like, like my dad making me sit through the movie Apollo 13 like 20 times, things like that. And just like really being enamored with the space program. And this shows you how naive I was back then, is I was like, hey, like NASA must have attorneys, right? Like I was like, I don't know. I remember I was sitting in property class, I think. And one of my really good friends, she was like, her and I were talking about like the jobs that we wanted to get. And I remember I was applying to this like municipal water district attorney role or something like that, just because it was open, just because it was like, because of the time that I graduated, it's like, man, is there just anybody hiring? And like, will they look at any? And then like something clicked, and I was like, this is something I've always wanted to do. They probably have attorneys. Like, why don't I just reach out to one of them? So like literally like went on to, I don't know, NASA.gov or something like that, ended up finding the chief counsel's email of NASA. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to send this guy an email. I'm just going to like attach my resume, which was probably a horrible resume at the time. Probably still said that my first job was like probably lifeguarding up there. Just like really really terrible resume. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to send him this, and wrote this email that was like, hey, I've always wanted to work at NASA. Love the space program. Like I can drive down there. You don't need to pay me. I'll sleep under my desk, whatever I need to do. And like just sent it out into the ether. And I was like, there's just no way that the chief counsel of NASA is ever going to email me back. And 3 days later, I got an email back from him. He's like, hey, yeah, we still have an open position. Why don't you drive down and interview for it? And drove down there, like interviewed for it, like nervous as all hell, and like same pitch, like, don't pay me, just let me work. And he was like, well, legally we have to pay you. And I was like, okay, or pay me, I'll take that too. And it was, and like, that was the first time working at NASA that I like really felt like I found what I like loved to do. And what I loved to do was working like inside of organizations and using legal almost as a means to an end to like influence positively a business or an organization or in NASA and an administration. And the bummer is that like that was right when NASA was going through budget cuts. So when it came time to actually like provide a long-term offer, they were like, hey, we'd love to, but we can't. And also NASA is like one of the few government administrations that's on a 2-year budget cycle. So it's like, so it's like not this year, and also not next year. So go figure out something else. And I'm like, what? It's like you find what you love to do, and then you can't do it anymore. And you're like what do I do now? So like I was like, okay, where do rock star in-house counsels go to like make the world a better place? Make a difference. And it was like, all right, Silicon Valley. So same thing, sending out emails into the ether. One company, Sum Total Systems, ended up like taking a chance on me for some reason. No idea why, again, but like, and so like went straight, in-house into a tech company. And I mean, I remember the time, like all my buddies from law school laughing at me, and they're like, you're ruining your career. You're going straight in-house. Like you got to go work at a law firm, etc. And I mean, I hate to like ruin the I ruined the end of the podcast here, but like didn't ruin my career. Everything's working out just fine. I'm really like enjoying what's come of it.
Talk us through, big companies, smaller companies that you've worked for. What's that exploration process like? When you once you were in-house, how did you continue to sort of like try to navigate towards issues that you really wanted to work on? Did it matter even if it was at a big place or a small place or with a big team or a small team?
Yeah, I mean, like early on in my career, with the economic environment, I didn't really have the opportunity to be like, this is exactly what I want, and I'm going to wait until I get it. Like I just could like, that just didn't exist, like the very fact of like having a job offer, like when you left school was incredible, particularly incredible for me, given transcripts and everything like that. So, your initial point is right, is that like, basically everyone was like, hey, like, you're a contracts attorney, like what, like that's not even a title. And everyone's like, you should have been an assistant general counsel, or you should have been a deputy general counsel. And like, I went in to my first job, like with that, I'll just call it because I'm calling it myself, with that attitude. And it was not the right attitude to go in with, like at all, like feeling like you were more important than you really were, So I encourage like every person early on in their career, not even early on in their career, at any point in your career, like take the job that you're excited about and that's going to like increase the neurons firing in your brain and doing cool things. than the title, because the title really doesn't matter. Eventually it probably
Yeah.
does, but especially early on, it doesn't matter. What matters is like what you're doing. So like at sum total, like we went through 5 acquisitions. This was when like they were shifting from on-prem to cloud. Like that's how long ago this was now. Safe Harbor fell. This was before GDPR. Like we were an international company. All of a sudden, I was doing like big deal contracts. I was doing M&A. I like was doing IP, and I would go talk to like some of my buddies that like laughed at me for taking like what seems like a little piddly in-house gig, and like they were just writing like the same motion that they had been writing since they got out of law school. Nothing wrong with that. Again, like I always feel like I like bash law firm attorneys in these things, and I like don't mean to do it, but like I always try to look at like the holistic opportunity and like what I get a chance to touch and grow, and titles come, money comes, but also like I've since then passed up cool titles and way more money to just to do stuff that I like really like doing, So
Yeah.
like I've had friends that have done the same thing. I've had friends that have left law school and like become product managers, and like had like true like I think my path is non-traditional. Their path is very non-traditional, but like you talk to them and they just like love what they do.
You brought up folks who've transitioned into product roles. I think that's a great segue into the next theme that we wanted to touch on, which is expanding beyond legal. And for you, I mean, that's happened in terms of titles, and we can talk about that in a second, like what some of those different titles mean and what some
Sure.
of those experiences are. Was that intentional though? Did it happen organically? Was it someone just bringing you a project that sat a little bit outside of your remit and saying, "Hey, Evan, why don't you try this?" Talk us through, moving kind of beyond a pure legal role.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that the one of the main reasons why I even like got into in-house and like tech, et cetera, is like um, I saw legal as a way to get as close to the business as quickly as possible, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, working even as just like a contracts attorney or whatever in my first job, I was like interacting with the CEO, the CFO, like our heads of product, like Eng, like everybody, and like all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden it was like, I was just like threaded out throughout the business. And, like, sure, I probably could have just like insulated myself and like not done anything and not pushed, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I remember like somebody that I talked to early on in my career, they were like, what do you just want to be like, you actually want to be a GC? And I was like, well, yeah, of course I do. Like I want like bring it on. And it's not for everybody, So like
Mm-hmm.
my experiences are purely my own. My impressions are purely my own. Like if you just want to be a product attorney, for your career, awesome. You should be,
Mm-hmm.
like if you just want to be a commercial attorney, like, I worked with like a really killer commercial attorney in my prior role. And like, that's what she loved to do. And it's like, awesome, do it, like I'm pumped for people when they find those things
Probably the
that they're
best negotiator in the company,
right. Yes. So like find the thing you're awesome at and you love to do and go do it. And like what I think I can be awesome at is like positively influencing the business. If it's through legal, great. And then if eventually that allows me to increase my scope, awesome. But the quickest and the most dramatic way up and in I saw was like, okay, how do I become a general counsel? Like how do I get there? And how do I get as like close into the business as I could? So like throughout my early career, I tried to figure out where my gaps were and like plug those gaps, So like anytime something came up at some total that I could be like, okay, how do I set myself up for success and potential general counsel roles down the road? Take it,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like our GC doesn't want to handle our IP portfolio anymore. Sweet. I'll handle it. Oh, like
Mm-hmm.
there's like this like M&A integration stuff that like is thankless work and no one really wants to do. Awesome. I'll handle it, because then like I sit in the next
Yeah.
interview and I'm not just like BSing. I'm like, yeah, I've done M&A. Yeah, I've done IP. Yeah, I've done this, and like, and like, I just love that like Swiss Army knifing, kind of like mentality too. And so then from some total, I moved to VMware. VMware is like I don't know, it was like a 150 person legal department. I was just like one
Huge.
of many, but still tried to like figure out ways to Swiss Army knife my way around there. So like, worked on this program where I could spend time with the corporate securities team, with the M&A team, spend some time with the
Mhm.
employment and the litigation team, all while still doing my like key regular commercial job as well. And it's like, okay, how do I just take on as much as I can while still doing good work, of course, just like keep keep building myself. And it's not just building a
Right.
resume, because I think plenty of people lie on their resume and they go pretty far anyway. So I probably could have just done that. But it's like, how do I actually do? And then when I get into the role where they let me do even more, I built that
Mhm.
foundation. That was also one of the reasons why I like went back and got my MBA. Is I was like, okay, how many GCs out there have an MBA? Not many. At least back then, maybe more do now. And I was like, okay, like that's because I would find myself sitting in like M&A meetings, meetings with finance, meetings with accounting, and so on. And I was like, okay, like I can't talk to any of this. How do I enable myself to talk to it in a really thoughtful way? And like going back and taking those finance classes and those accounting classes, we took HR classes, we took IT classes, etc. Like then all of a sudden I can speak to this stuff. I'm not an expert in any
Mhm.
of it, but then you start to show the business that you can make those connections, that you can actually like speak the language of other people in other
Mhm.
organizations, right? And like just kind of like slowly building these building blocks until eventually I got to a point where I was just like, all right, like I'm ready to go try and be a GC if somebody will let me go be a GC. And then like after that happened, I like my first opportunity to kind of grow and expand out of that was at Hired when I remember like
Mhm.
the CFO pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey, you want to take on an additional team?" And I was just like, "Yeah, of course I do." And he was like, "Do you want to know what the team is before you agree to taking on the additional team?" Like, no. When the CFO asks you if you want to do additional stuff, you say absolutely. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, I'll do it.
Uh-huh.
And that was the operations team at Hired, and then and so I feel like that was like kind of my first step outside of just traditional GC work, and that's where I feel like kind of the momentum started. That like, yeah, I still wanted to be a GC at that point, but I wanted to be a GC plus other things. Since then, I've gotten the opportunity to expand beyond the role, which has been super special
Grow even
for me.
more.
Yeah,
So then, you get back in the, or you go back and are able to, grow into a GC role and begin to take on more. One of those additional titles, which happens at at Poshmark, is running corp dev, and I want to drill in on that,
sure.
because I think that's a place where a lot of GCs, even those without M&A experience, want to grow. Talk us through what that really meant, and what that looks like in the context of also having a CFO who I'm sure wanted to have a strong say, and even maybe a chief product officer, et cetera, wants to have a strong say in what corp dev means, M&A activity the company might be engaged in.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm really curious for like, what does the title head of corp dev really mean, and how do you work and sort of play nice with the other stakeholders there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was I was very fortunate at Poshmark to be surrounded by a ton of really supportive other executives, right? The CEO in particular, right? And we were going through the CFO resigned and we brought in a new CFO. The prior CFO, Corp Dev, lived underneath of that CFO. Well, leading up to the CFO resignation and bringing in a new CFO, I had done just a ton of very casual, candidly, like conversations with the CEO, with at that point, he was our VP of enterprise, et cetera, just like ideating on the industry, on
Mm-hmm.
not just the state of our business, the state of like the entirety of the ecosystem, what kind of feature sets were out there, what like who was getting funding, why, like what our beliefs were on the future. And I feel like those conversations, and there was one in particular, like a company event where like me and the CEO and a few other leaders just kind of like over, I don't know, just like aside from the event, we're just like jamming on a bunch of different like industry ideas and like really
Mm-hmm.
leaning into those opportunities to like not just provide legal guidance or business guidance, but like just gut understanding of the industry. And
Mm-hmm.
I credit not just the support of the leadership team, but also that moment to show the leadership team that like, all right, Evan is engaged and actively thinking about this stuff, actively understands the industry, what other players are doing and why, the positive impacts of it, the
Mm-hmm.
negative impacts of it, and so on. And like then continuing to contextualize that into the work that I did, into the insights that I had for the rest of the business. And then when we were moving through the CFO resignation, like one of the things that, and I forget whether the CEO brought it up or I brought it up, it doesn't really matter who brought it up, was that like, hey, I would love to, and by that time I had built a legal team, like awesome
Mm-hmm.
legal team running great. So I was also able to say like, hey, like I think that I can step out a little bit and take on additional responsibilities, right? And I would love for those additional responsibilities to be strategy, partnerships, corporate development, things like that, right? Like building our ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
We had done an M&A deal that I was involved in as well, that we executed, the business executed on incredibly, still working incredibly within the business as well. So good M&A success story, and just like was, I think, pretty transparent about like, that's where I wanted my career to go. So like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still like the GC, still want to be the attorney to the company, et cetera. But like unleash me, let me kind of go out there and conquer. And, CEO was super supportive of it. You mentioned like product, incoming CFO, everybody very supportive of that. And like, and I really tried to lean into it, like I had to develop my own reports on the market, and who
Mm-hmm.
was getting who was getting investor money, why they were getting it, what like features and product sets, etc., were like prevailing in the industry and why, and what Poshmark should do about it, and so on. So like really tried to like actively push into the role and then keep actively pushing and so on. And it's just the GC role, if executed correctly, actually can inject a ton of positivity and creativity into some of these,
Yes.
complementary roles. But I think there's this like idea that like all we do is sit around and think about risk. I think that some GCs, maybe that's all they do and maybe that's all they're supposed to do. And like I appreciate it, disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. But I think that they're like, if you can show in a meaningful way your executive team, your CEO, the board, whoever it is, that like you have the ability and the want to execute on greater things, on things outside of your scope. I think we as GCs have an excellent opportunity to do that. And I'm like, you know, clearly, but we'll reemphasize how just super appreciative I was of the Poshmark team being supportive of it and seeing that too, because like I wouldn't be where I am in my career today if it wasn't for them seeing that then.
It certainly requires initiative. I love one of the words you used, which is creativity, too, because
Yep.
I think that it really is. When you begin to take on roles like that, it's not even just execution or like handling, operationalizing something. You're actually sort of creating a new view of the market or a new view of competitors that didn't exist before,
Yep.
or um, there may not be an easy answer to what is a pretty open-ended question, but is it just permissionless? Like, how do you begin to activate that sort of creativity?
Oh, how do you activate creativity? I don't know. I've always been creative, man. I just kind of like I've always
Yeah.
done it. I don't know. Like I just love this stuff, So like and I haven't been super afraid to embarrass myself. I'm always pretty good about embarrassing myself. You can ask like any of my college buddies, and they'll tell you I did plenty of it and still do. And so like I think a lot of it is that. I think a lot of it is like not being guarded, like not being like, I don't know, should I say something? Because like I remember even at Hired, you get into the room with everybody, and then once you're in the room, it's scary. And you're like, should I say anything or should I just shut up and should I just nod my head? And you're like, yeah, I agree with you. Yep, that sounds good. Um, and, um, and then I started like really trying to pay attention to the people that, excuse my language, got shit done in companies. and made things happen. And there was like a 1-to-1 ratio of the people that could get things done in companies and the people that were in the right way outspoken in these meetings. And I was like, okay, like I need to push myself like out of my comfort zone and speak up and realize that like I may not always be saying the right thing and I may get things wrong and I may have the wrong intuition, and like I should always be able to have my mind changed and have the CEO or whoever it is be like, nope, we've tried it and you're wrong. But like remove that need for embarrassment and just like lean into it and talk about it. And so like I wasn't that good at it at Hired. I got a little bit better at it at Poshmark. I think I'm much, much better at it at Bambee. Is like actually like leaning in, providing thought. And I think that it's like a snowball. It collects upon itself, right? So like the more you do it, the more comfortable you get doing it, the more right you are more often of the time, or just the more you get used to being wrong and it's okay. And
Right.
it just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. And all of a sudden you go from being like the person in the room that's just kind of like, I don't know, to like we got to see what Evan has to say.
As you've grown now into the chief strategy officer role at Bambee, has the day-to-day changed a lot from the days when you were, tell us a little bit about that. Like what does the day look like today as opposed to what it looked like back when you were, focused, we won't say solely on legal, but where like your remit was much more legal intensive and legal heavy?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether I said this out loud to the CEO or not of Bambee, but like, I felt like previously I was known as like the GC that did that did strategy and corporate development, right? I'm really trying to, and in this role, I think am seen as like the strategy corp dev guy that also happens to be the attorney, right? And I think that that's a really important switch, right? And we talked about it earlier, is that like a lot of times that attorney moniker just like casts this shadow over everything else that happens. And, people are like, we'll go to Evan for rules and regulations and that's it, because that's what he does, and so like, and so that was it was a really important and a really, intentional, move. Once again, disclaimer that like if GC and just being a GC is awesome. Just being a corporate counsel is awesome. It's all awesome. So like, sometimes I say these things and I'm like, I don't want anyone to think that I'm like, I was just bored of being a GC and what a snooze fest and I got to go do corporate development. It's like, not that. It's just like where, once again, asking myself, like, what do I want to do when I grow up, And so I remember talking to the CEO of Bambee during the interview, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but basically him saying like, what do you want to do? And I was like, look, I want to be the CEO. And I was like, I don't know if it's right now or if it's in the next job, but like that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to run a company one day, and like I want my next role to be more like to be as close to that as I can get. And, and I want to I want to learn, and and once again, going to get stuff wrong, but I want to like fill gaps, and I want to grow, and I want to influence the business in ways I haven't before. And I really feel like I'm doing that. I mean, for the briefest of moments, like was helping manage the revenue team, have worked with the CEO and the product team on like our product stuff, have been, restructuring partnerships, talking about corporate development stuff, et cetera. So it's like, I love it because it's like the most disparate amount of work that I've done in my career, where it's just like bouncing around to all these different things. And like, it's almost weird when legal stuff pops up, because I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I'm also still an attorney.
Right.
and it's time to do some attorney stuff too.
You've started your own startup.
Yep.
You've had a consulting firm.
Yep.
You've got a real estate investment vehicle.
Yep.
You've done some startup investing.
Yep.
You now have Neatworking, which is a very cool newsletter, and people should subscribe to that. And we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But I guess the first question I've got here is really like, what drives you to start something new? And more than that, not just to maybe like make one real estate investment or make one startup investment, but sort of like to try to create something bigger around it? Like, when do you know? When's the inflection point where you're like, no, this is something and I want to turn it into something. It's not just a check that I cut once upon a time.
Yeah. Oh, well, uh, my wife would be laughing at this conversation because she says basically as soon as I get any idea, I start executing on it like immediately. And so there's my diligence usually comes long after I've started doing something, which is like probably not the right legal way to do things, but like I just get super excited about stuff, and then I just like the best way to do it is just to do it. Like I hate that things just like sit on my Google Drive as scratch notes that I like haven't executed on, and like my iPhone notes section is just full of like business ideas that like I'm like, man, I just need to do these things. I just need to go like so what I've tried to do is I've like always tried to have a bias for action. Anytime something feels like it's the moment, feels like something I'm excited about, feels like like and like also thinking about like what's really the worst thing that could happen. So when I started like real estate investing, I was like, what's really the worst thing that can happen? Is like, all right, maybe I lose the closing costs on some of these, but like what's the best thing that can happen? It's like, all right, I learn a new industry, like I make some new connections there, and maybe there's some financial upside, maybe not, but like I've had a good time, and I've done it, and I can say that I've done it. And like I, a lot of my, which we'll talk about, a lot of my Neatworking articles kind of revolve around all the existential problems I have with life, and realizing that my life is finite, and I'm still kind of coming to grips with the fact that it's finite. But I guess like what I'm trying to do is not defer like anything until tomorrow, until the next year, until the year after that. Is like, man, like I just got to do it, because like I don't know that I'm gonna have the chance to do it like when I finally get around to doing it. And so like that's regardless of what that is. Like I signed up to play in this like wood bat baseball league this year because I was like, I'm just gonna do it, because like I played baseball in the past, and like who knows if I'm gonna be able to play it later. So like I'm just gonna do it now. And like I do the same thing, like I buy and sell cars pretty regularly, and the exact same thing. It'll be like a Friday afternoon, and I'm like, whatever, I'm selling this car and I'm gonna go buy this other car, because who knows if I'm gonna have the chance to do this again. So like it's constantly driven by this mentality of like, I don't know when, other than right now, I'm gonna have the brain power and the bandwidth and the excitement and just the opportunity to do these things. So go do them. So like real estate was the same way. Consulting firm, like me and a few of my buddies, one finance guy, one kind of product and ops guy, and me, we kept on getting asked by like our network and our friends to like weigh in on different things and so on. And we're like, there's something here. And instead of like kind of sitting around and pontificating on it, we're like, I'm just going to write an engagement agreement today, and then we're going to sign people up, and then we're going to help them with their business, and like, let's go, luckily I've had people in my life that like reel me back in from like just like being too energetic about these things. Like I'm working on something now with like two other of my buddies, and like if you're excited about something and you have the opportunity to do it, go do it. Don't wait, because either one, like you may not be able to do it tomorrow. Somebody else may start doing it, and you don't have the opportunity to do it anymore. So like, why not me? And like, why not right now?
Yeah. With that sentiment in mind, tell us about Neatworking. I've been subscribing. I love the newsletters. You interview, cool people. I mean, one of the conversations was about NASA and someone's dream of becoming an astronaut, which I thought was super. I thought it was a super fun article.
Yeah.
If folks haven't read any of them yet, that's a good one to start with, I think. Tell us about the idea for Neatworking first, maybe before sort of like when did it come to fruition?
Yeah. So I was at a holiday party with some of my buddies this last year, and I was talking to them, and we were trying to figure out the last time we had hung out. And I felt like it was, a month or two ago, and it turns out it was years ago. Like I hadn't seen them in ages. And I was like, and it was kind of like this aha moment where I realized like, so I'd spent the last 2 years like heads down with the Poshmark IPO, Heads down with the Poshmark take private acquisition. Had a kid, so had at that point had like a year-old kid, and just like and had realized that like so much of my time was spent zeroed into this laptop that like I hadn't made an effort in my personal life to like keep connections with people, hadn't made a good effort in my professional life. And then when I started really thinking about it, I was like, man, like a lot of people that I know are doing really cool stuff. And like, I'm not learning from them. Like we can learn from everybody. Like we have the opportunity to
Sure.
learn something from everybody. And I'm like, and I'm not availing myself of any of these opportunities. So my New Year's resolution was that I was going to reconnect with somebody in my network once a week, and it was going to be like uh, no stress, no scripts, no question. It's just like getting coffee with them. Like I just want to spend an hour with somebody and like learn who they are again. Then I started thinking like a little bit deeper into it, and I was like, okay, like I might get a lot out of this, but like, is there something I can do to like help the universe get something out of this too? And I was like, maybe. And I was like, I know that video podcasts and stuff like that are, more popular than Substacks and everything. But I was like, but like going back to like college, I was like, what do I really like love doing? Like, I love writing. I actually, shameless plug, I wrote a children's book a couple years ago, which was an awesome experience. And so I was like, how do I keep writing? How do I keep
What's that about? I'm not gonna. We can't let you off the hook there. What's the kids' book about?
um, so it's called Max's Big Day, and
Cool.
it's a long form poem that I also wrote and illustrated about what our cat does when we go to work for the day, and so like all the adventures he gets into, and I ended up publishing it and using all the proceeds from publishing it to raise money for an arts and medicine program at the Children's Hospital back in my hometown. So
Amazing.
yeah, so
Well, we'll get the link in case anybody wants to pick up a copy, and
for
we'll
sure,
include that in the notes
yeah,
for this episode. That's
yeah,
super cool.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I've always, you talk about being creative. Like growing up, I wanted to be a cartoonist, so I drew for a while. I drew for our college paper. I was a I was a professional stand-up comedian for about 7 years, so I like did a bunch of stand-up comedy. I wrote this children's book because like I realized that I hadn't been creative in a while and I wanted to be creative again. And then Neatworking is the same thing, right? Neatworking is like, okay, maybe this is my opportunity to be creative again. Whether like whether the only person that reads it is my mother or not, like, I just love the process of sitting down and creating. And so
Uh-huh.
I was like, okay, I'll write a blog about this and like I'll post it to my network. And if people want to read it, awesome. And then I started thinking about the blog and I was like, I don't just want this to be like you're the CEO of a tech company. How do you raise money? Here's how you raise
Sure.
money. And I'm like, I was like, there's more to people and to their experiences than just like the transactional parts of what they did. And so these conversations are really cool because like I find that we don't even talk about, or we barely talk about like the professional part of it. What we usually talk about is we talk about like the emotion behind it, like the philosophy behind it. About, you bring up the NASA article. It was a aerospace engineer that I was talking to, and we just talked about like how similar, like his passions evolved, and after he had like his kid, and he was in the both of his kids were obviously were born in the hospital, and then when there was a job opportunity to work for the hospital, and he realized like how his product work could touch like people in that way, and like how he got excited about that and about like just like pursuing that dream. I had another talk with the CEO where all we did was talk about like American diplomacy and like and how diplomacy is effectively, we're losing diplomacy daily. And like all that is to say is like each of these talks they're very special because they're all different, they're all unique, and they're all beautifully unstructured that allow me to like have these very like deep and exciting takeaways about life, about things that they've gone through, about and it reflects a lot on then like what I've gone through too. I end up learning a lot about myself through this process. So like it doesn't contribute to my career at all. It doesn't make me learn about securities law or about how to write a good limitation liability provision or anything like that. It is just like this purely raw like positivity that I get out of just like reconnecting with people, learning about people, and like understanding their journeys. It's been a great year doing it.
One of the things about this sort of thing too, and I'm curious if you've had the same experience that I have. When folks come to me and they ask, like, they say, like, I want to start writing more, or one of the things that I found with some of the writing that I've done recently, or these episodes, or one, you do it more when you do it more, right? So like if you start writing, you write a lot more, and you have ideas about what to write more frequently. And
Yep.
two, you put a lot less pressure on yourself for it to be perfect, right? I think that if this was the only episode that I was recording this year, right, I would feel a lot more pressure than the fact that this is going to be part of, sort of like our second season and fall series. I don't know if it's the same way with you, but when people come and they say, like, I just don't know if what I write is going to be good enough, or I want to try this thing, I usually kind of say, like, well, just get through like the first one or two things, and then it starts to get easier, and you start to feel like what you're putting out is getting a great reception, and you don't feel quite as much pressure if one of them isn't quite as good. I don't know if you've experienced the same thing with Neatworking.
No doubt. And in fact, like my very first Neatworking post is like describing what Neatworking is all about. And in there, I say I'm just going to start writing, and like there may be errors in there, and the grammar may not be great, but I wanted to just feel like me talking. And in fact, like some of the best feedback I've gotten was one of my buddies was like, when I read these, I hear you in them. Like I hear you talking, and similar in the way I talk, like there's like a statement in there, but then there's like, I use parentheticals for like asides of different stories, because like, that's just kind of the way I talk too. And like, and to your point about like just doing it, making errors, etc. Growing up, I played music. I was like, played percussion and orchestra, drumline, jazz bands, things like that. And, one of the things that a conductor told me like very early on in my music career is like, if you make a mistake, just keep going. Don't let anyone know you made the mistake. It's not don't let anyone know you make a mistake, but like a lot of times people make a mistake and they'll be like, essentially.
Right.
And it's like, no, like, because 99.9% of the audience has no idea that wasn't exactly like how it was supposed to be anyways. Right. And I think creativity, when I was doing stand-up comedy, same thing. When I was drawing as a cartoonist, same thing. Neatworking, same thing. Is like the pursuit of perfection is great, but you have to understand getting to perfection is not the point, and not making errors is not the point. Like doing it is the point. Actually like being creative, having that work product. I mean, I think the same thing about professional careers too. And like, outside counsel attorneys probably do not agree with me here, but like, I just don't think things need to be perfect. I think like, I think things need to be creative. They need to be organic. We need to understand the thing that like we don't deliver perfection all the time or any of the time, and be comfortable with it. And I think that's especially true in like creative pursuits, is like, don't just sit there and grind and make sure that every comma is right and everything, or that this line connects and stuff like that, because like, that's not the point. It's especially not the point of creativity. Creativity and doing things like that is doing it. Doing it is the important part. Like, even if you stink at it for a while, and even if you stink at it the whole time, doing it, it's like taking Latin. Like I still stink at Latin. I still try to read things on old churches when I travel, like I'm still not good at it, but it's fun just to do it, and doing it is the important part.
Normally, as we wrap up, I start to wrap up. I ask guests for advice for young lawyers or people in their in the early stages of their careers. I think that's great advice, so I'm happy to leave it there. But if there's anything else that you would offer those who are sort of coming up or trying to be creative, want to give you the opportunity as well.
No, I mean, I think we've pretty much touched on everything, I mean, like, find what you truly love to do. Don't let other people tell you what you should love to do. Don't get wrapped around the axle about titles and all that other kind of stuff, and like, boy, like I just really wish I had owned my mistakes earlier in my career and been upfront
Hmm.
about it, because there's just so much power in that. And I found that some of the best leaders, some of the best executives, like just own mistakes, which is really
Hmm.
cool. I found that that's really, really cool. Just don't take it so seriously. Boy, everybody just takes all this stuff so seriously. And you gotta, like, at the end of the day, you gotta love this stuff. And like, I think there has to be a little bit of levity in order to have that enjoyment, and just like, so like,
Hmm.
find what you love to do. Don't take what you're doing super like seriously, so you can still enjoy it. You can still derive pleasure out of it, um, not deriving perfection out of it. And if you can't do those things, then like keep looking for where it is you can do those things. And
Hmm.
like who cares if somebody at Big Law is like flying around in a helicopter and driving an Aston Martin? Like doesn't matter if they're doing that and they found what they love to do. Awesome. But also like if
Yeah.
you are, if you're working for, I don't know, if you're a legal counsel for a food processing manufacturer and you love that, awesome,
Hmm.
dude, awesome. Like just like I like the coolest thing that I found in like Neatworking has showed me this is that like I talk to people at all different stages of their career, all different industries, all different goals in their career, and the
Hmm.
common thread through all of them is the excitement and the enjoyment for finding what you're truly put on this earth to do. So find that
Hmm.
and go do
This has been an amazing episode, Evan.
it.
Thanks so much. I love your positivity. I love your creativity. I learned something with this one too, which is that I should record more of these on Friday morning, because now I'm super enthused
Let's
to
go.
to go
Yeah.
into the rest of my Friday and into my weekend.
Yep.
Um, Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and to all the listeners out there, look forward to hopefully seeing you again next time on The Abstract. Thanks so
Awesome.
much.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe so you can get notified as soon as we post a new episode. And if you liked this one, I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So please leave a rating or a comment. If you'd like to reach out to me or our guest, our LinkedIn profiles are in the description. See you all next week.